When the company's senior management officially announced my promotion today, the entire floor of the office nearly erupted. Congratulations flooded in one after another on WeChat work. Congratulations on Piper's new position. Treat everyone to drinks. Sister Piper has finally made it to the top. The group chat notifications kept popping up. I was just about to check the group chat when the phone call pulled me away. The administration department called to inform me that I needed to attend a company emergency press conference at 3 p.m. that afternoon, where the chairman would personally announce my appointment as deputy director of the strategic planning department. My mind hadn't fully processed the news yet when my colleagues pulled me up from my seat and dragged me to the break room. Sister Piper, let's celebrate in advance. Drinks are on me. You've been due for a vice president position for years. I've been feeling bad for you for ages. I waved with a smile. Don't be ridiculous, we each have our own role to play. Whatever the company decides, I'll follow through. Although I said that, I was indeed a bit excited inside. In my 12th year in the industry, I had worked my way up from frontline planner to project supervisor, then to department director, becoming the woman who knew the company's strategy best. Although this promotion came slowly, it was steady. I glanced down at my phone and saw a screenshot of the notice that read, Piper Lynn promoted to vice president, in charge of strategic planning and human resources coordination. When I saw those words, my fingertips trembled slightly. I had been waiting for this day for too long. To avoid making mistakes at the afternoon press conference, I went ahead to the administrative building's document room to prepare my speech and materials. I was already very familiar with the company's OA system. This promotion meant I would start taking over some HR permissions, so I intended to download the latest organizational chart and job distribution table to showcase the company's team expansion plan on stage. After logging into the system backend, I first searched by job title keywords to pull up data on all current department heads. While downloading the files, I casually opened the quarterly layoff list, mainly to verify a resource optimization item. Just a quick click and I couldn't pull my hand away. I saw my name on the list of people to be laid off, clearly listed as Piper Lynn, with the submitter being Ruby Cheen. My mind exploded and the smile on my face froze instantly. The system showed the application was submitted on Friday night at 7:26 p.m. That day I was on a business trip in Guangzhou, and Leo Gu had stayed at the office to handle financial data. He said he would work late on Friday and Ruby Cheen would stay to help him with the reports. Ruby Cheen was Leo Gu's childhood sweetheart, now his assistant, and hardly anyone in the company didn't know how much he looked after her. But even if he was taking care of an assistant who had only been there for 3 months, how could she possibly have the authority to touch my position? I quickly clicked into the details page where the notes section read, Insufficient strategic fit, recommend optimization. Doesn't that sound like standard boilerplate copy from a layoff template? Even the sentence structure was too lazy to change. My mind was in chaos, but my actions were extremely calm. I opened the approval process and confirmed again that the submitter was indeed Ruby Cheen, and it showed that he used the vice president's authorization code when operating. I wasn't a tech fool, that was Leo Gu's exclusive management permission. He gave his own permission to a recent graduate assistant, and then she used that permission to lay me off. My palms were cold as ice, but my heartbeat was deafening in my ears. I didn't dare click further, quickly closed the back-end page, but the words I had just seen burned into my mind over and over again. Recommend optimization, submitter Ruby Cheen, vice president authorization code. I suppressed my anxiety and called Leo Gu's mobile phone. He answered quickly, Hello Piper? I was just about to message you. The press conference is set. The chairman will be there in person at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Remember to get there early. I forced my trembling voice to ask, Are you available now? I'm in the research room. I need to ask you something. Sure, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I could wait 5 minutes, but my patience and trust might not last that long. As soon as Leo Gu walked in, he smiled and handed me a cup of coffee, for this afternoon. I took the cup but didn't drink it. At that moment I was standing in front of the computer, and the monitor behind me that hadn't been turned off was still on the layoff list page. I turned around to look at him. Did you stay at the company last Friday night? Yeah, he nodded. I was working on data with Ruby Cheen. What's wrong? I clenched my back teeth. Do you know that the layoff system requires high-level permissions to submit? He was slightly startled, then smiled. Why suddenly ask about this? Do you know that Ruby Chin submitted a layoff application? I stared at him, speaking each word clearly. His expression stiffened for a moment, then he looked away. Oh, you're talking about that. Don't worry about it. She was just joking around. She said she wanted to test the system permissions, so I let her try it. I took a sharp breath. Test? Do you think it's fun to put my name on the layoff list? Come on, don't take it seriously, he frowned, seeming to think I was making a big deal out of nothing. She was just curious. I didn't expect it would actually scare you. You can just cancel it from the back end yourself. It's not troublesome. What about the permissions? Did you give them to her? I stared intently into his eyes. I'm the vice president. Isn't it fine to use my account? He said casually. She doesn't understand the process and she couldn't actually do anything. Don't be so petty. I looked at the man before me, my fiancé of 5 years, someone who had worked side by side with me in the office at countless late nights, and he actually called me petty. My voice dropped. Do you know, if I hadn't seen this list in advance, all the executives would know today that I was the one laid off? I knew you'd see it, he grew impatient. Aren't you checking the system every day? He was just playing around, testing whether you're sensitive. Come on, don't be so fragile. So she was just joking, I'll just retract it. Is the whole problem my fault? Leo-gu, it's just a misunderstanding, right? Don't make it seem like we're scheming against you or something. He frowned. There's still a press conference this afternoon, don't mess yourself up. I took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, I know. Seeing me comply, he finally smiled and reached out to ruffle my hair, but I turned my head away. I'll go prepare in the meeting room, you should head there too. He didn't notice anything unusual and left on his own. I stood in place, watching his figure disappear in the direction he went, my fingers tightly gripping the already cold cup of coffee. When I returned to the strategy department, there were already celebration cupcakes and balloons stacked on the desk, with colleagues gathering around to congratulate me. I mechanically smiled and responded to each one. President Lin, congratulations, congratulations, finally you're getting the vice president position, we're all happy for you. I nodded. Thank you all, I'll treat everyone after work today. Just as I was speaking, Ruby Chin walked over in a light blue suit dress, holding a bouquet of flowers. President Lin, these are the flowers I specially ordered. I'm so happy to hear about your promotion. She smiled respectfully, but her tone carried a hint of playful sarcasm. I looked down at the card on the bouquet, which read, Gift from Vice President Assistant Ruby Chin. Vice President Assistant? When was this position established? Who approved it? How come I never heard about it? She seemed to sense that I was paying attention to the card and quickly explained, Oh, it was proposed by Mr. Gu, just decided today. He said from now on I'll be directly coordinating with you, and I'll handle any errands you need done. I forced a smile. That's great. Her eyes darted around. By the way, about the system issue, I'm sorry, really it wasn't intentional, I was just curious and clicked on it, didn't know how I ended up in the list. I stared at her, my voice devoid of warmth. Such curiosity is generally not welcomed by the company. Her expression froze for a moment, then quickly lowered her head. I know I was wrong, please don't hold a grudge for such a small mistake. I turned around and sat down, flipping through the documents, but my heart was in complete chaos. That phrase she just said, going forward you'll be handling the coordination with me, sent an inexplicable chill through my chest. I had never been someone easily replaceable, but at that moment I felt for the first time that my position had already been arranged behind my back. 5 minutes before leaving work, a pop-up appeared on my system. You are on the layoff list. Do you confirm withdrawal of the layoff application? Will be automatically submitted to HR at 17:59. I stared at the red text on the screen, my hand hovering over the mouse without clicking withdraw. I knew that if I clicked, everything would be as if it had never happened, they would continue to be a happy couple, Ruby Chin would continue as the new vice president's assistant, and I would still be the company's vice president, everything staying the same. But this same came with someone quietly pushing you off a cliff when you were completely unprepared. As I looked at that blinking prompt box, only one sentence echoed in my mind. They thought I wouldn't dare leave, but they had never asked me if this place was worth staying. Time jumped to 17:59, the screen flashed and the system notified, your layoff application has taken effect. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes and took a deep breath. On my first day as promoted, I decided to turn around and leave. At 7 p.m. that evening, as I just walked through the door, Leo Gu had already changed into loungewear and was curled up on the sofa watching shows. Back already? He raised his phone toward me. I ordered your favorite rice noodle soup and also ordered grilled skewers. We should celebrate tonight. I didn't respond immediately, put down my bag and went to the bathroom to wash my face. The person in the mirror hadn't removed her makeup yet, but looked exceptionally tired. The aroma of food drifted from the living room and I walked back to the sofa. Leo Gu had already arranged the meal boxes and handed me a pair of chopsticks. Vice President Lin, please sit, have a seat. I took the chopsticks and forced a smile. The vice president hasn't even settled in yet and you're already planning a victory banquet? You're something else. He smiled as he picked up a bite of bean curd skin. It's just that you're too prone to anxiety. Isn't everything going smoothly today? Look at how happy everyone is. Yeah, I said, looking down as I tore open my drink wrapper. Everyone's happy. He noticed my tone was off and glanced at me sideways. What's wrong? I stared at him for a few seconds and asked lightly, did you mess with the system on Friday night last week when you were working overtime in the office? Leo Gu paused for a moment. His smile didn't change, but his chopsticks paused slightly. Are you still obsessed with that matter? Do you think I shouldn't be? Piper, he said with a slightly reproachful tone, you're being too sensitive. She's just a little girl, she hasn't even mastered the system yet. She just made a mistake and you didn't get into any trouble either. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the napkins on the table, suddenly realizing, you know that after the layoff list is officially submitted, it has to go through the board of directors approval process. By then, even if I jumped into the Yellow River, I couldn't clear my name. But didn't you see it? It wasn't actually submitted. He had an attitude of complete certainty. You just withdrew it, why make such a big deal out of it? I stared at him for a long time without speaking. He casually opened a bag of sour beans and continued eating, chewing as he said, don't take everything to heart. Getting promoted is a good thing, don't let this little setback affect your mood. I muttered under my breath, a little setback? He nodded. Right, Ruby Chin wasn't being intentional. She's a bit childish in general, don't hold it against her. I smiled slightly and said no more. The atmosphere at the dining table grew quiet. Leo Gu ate happily, but I felt like there was no taste in my mouth at all. The next morning, as soon as I stepped into the office, Ruby Chin was already waiting at the door, holding a cup of coffee, her smile sweet as if it had just jumped out of a script. Good morning, President Lin, she said. I nodded slightly, not planning to engage in small talk, and prepared to walk past her. Can we talk for a moment? She ran after me, her voice soft as sugar stuck in her throat. Go ahead, I said, stopping. She glanced around, then whispered, I really didn't mean to do it yesterday. I looked at her meticulously applied makeup and asked, how did you gain access to the HR permissions page as just an assistant? I clicked by mistake, she said, her head down as if about to cry. I didn't mean to fire you. I don't even have the nerve. Vice President Gu asked me to look up some data. I thought it was a test page, so I just filled out a test template with your name. I didn't mean it. I thought it was just an example. He looked like a wrong student. I realized something was off after I checked, but the system seemed to freeze at the time. I didn't know what happened later, so I just left it alone. She looked up at me with watery eyes. Sister Lin, I really admire you. You've achieved something extraordinary to reach your position. I've always looked up to you as a role model. I was speechless for a moment. She moved closer and added, I'm not the kind of person with ulterior motives. If you're angry, I can go apologize to H. I looked down. Don't click things randomly in the future. Thank you, President Lin. Her eyes lit up instantly, like a prisoner granted clemency, as she handed me the coffee. This is the one you usually drink. I remembered you like it with half a scoop of sugar. I took the cup, my fingers pausing. I did indeed like this coffee, but rarely drank it in the office, because I didn't want to reveal my taste preferences unless someone cared deeply about me. And she had only been here for less than 3 months. I looked up into her innocent eyes and suddenly felt a thin layer of ice press against my back. Not long after returning to my desk, a WeChat notification popped up, a screenshot and voice message from Zhou Xiao. Sis, This vice president's assistant sure has a wild nightlife. I opened the screenshot. It was a social media post from 2 in the morning. Ruby Chin had posted a photo of a candlelit dinner, with 2 steaks and 2 glasses of red wine on the table with the caption, "Thank you, President A, for all the support along the way. I finally deserve the title of Vice President's Assistant." Several familiar faces had liked it and many commented, "Sister, you're getting more beautiful every day. You said hard work pays off and you've proven it." I stared at the photo for a few seconds, then suddenly realized the silver chain on the wrist on the right side of the wine glass. It was the exact kind of business watch Lyogu usually wore. I clicked into her profile and scrolled back, realizing this wasn't the first time she'd posted something subtly suggestive. "Some say I'm lucky, but that's because I know who to follow. Timing is more important than effort. There's more than one vice president. I'm also a vice president assistant." Each line was wrapped in cleverness, a mix of boastful pretense and truth, leaving no room for criticism. I closed the page and tapped the desk with my fingers. Vice President's assistant. Now I realized she never saw herself as just a young girl. The company's weekly meeting starts at 2 p.m. sharp. I thought today's focus would be my promotion and official assumption of the position, but Lyogu cleared his throat at the beginning and shifted gears. Besides announcing Piper Lin's promotion to vice president, there's another personnel arrangement to be made today. He looked toward the right side of the conference table and nodded at Ruby Chin. Due to the newly added project chain management function in the strategy department, we are now establishing the position of deputy assistant, to be held by Ruby Chin, assisting Vice President Lin with daily coordination work. The conference room fell into silence. It was a few seconds before someone lightly clapped, followed by sparse responses. I looked at Lyogu's composed and calm face across from me, his lips curled into a smile that said, "You already knew, didn't you?" Then I looked at Ruby Chin. Her cheeks were slightly red, her lips curved in an appropriate smile, looking surprised and honored. No one pointed out the real logic behind her sudden rise to a core figure overnight, but I scanned the people in the conference room. They mostly saw through it too, yet they all pretended not to. Lyogu said, "Vice President Lin, you can offer a few words." I stood up, glanced expressionlessly at Ruby Chin and spoke calmly. "In work I won't let personal feelings interfere with professional duties. But please, Assistant Chin, remember that on this position, any action must bear responsibility." She was stunned for a moment, then nodded vigorously. "Yes, Vice President Lin is absolutely right. I will be more careful." The meeting continued, but my mind was filled with only one thought. From today on, she is no longer the little childhood friend of President Gu. She is now a person I've officially placed in power, at least on the surface. The moment I returned to my office, I opened the system. The familiar prompt box appeared again. "Do you want to withdraw the layoff application? The system will lock the submission within 72 hours. I stared at that blue button for a long time, my fingertip hovering over withdrawal, yet I never clicked. Everything happened too fast, so fast it felt like a script already written, with Lyogu not even bothering with any setup, directly lifting her up as if he had already assumed I wouldn't leave, or that he simply didn't care whether I stayed or went. And I suddenly realized he wasn't unaware of what he had done. He just didn't care about the embarrassment I might face because of it. The system was still counting down, 8 minutes and 37 seconds remaining until submission to HR system. I smiled faintly and clicked close, not because I didn't want to withdraw, but because I didn't want to retreat. Saturday morning, sunlight fell on the nightstand and I was awakened by the alarm clock. The silver ring beside me gleamed in the light. It was the engagement ring Lyogu had given me 3 years ago. At the time he said, "When you get promoted, we'll go try on our wedding dress." Back then I laughed and replied, "What if I never get promoted?" He ruffled my hair and said, "Then I'll help you promote yourself." These years we'd almost lived in work, overtime, business trips, project meetings, and even holidays were often spent at the office. I used to think we were partners walking side by side, with our relationship and careers steadily growing stronger. In the top folder of my phone gallery, there was still a photo of that wedding dress. A mermaid silhouette, sleeveless, with a waistline that fit perfectly. It was the first dress I tried on at the bridal shop. At the time I said we'd wait until the day I became vice president to try it on. Lyogu had said, "When that day comes, You'll wear this and I promise I won't be able to take my eyes off you." He smiled at me then, his eyes full of genuine pride. I saved that photo in a special album and titled it Later, but I never expected later to come so quickly or to end so fast. At 2 p.m. while sorting through department files, my phone lit up. It was Zhou Xiao sending a WeChat video. "Sister, you see this?" I opened the video. At first, it showed a high-end bridal shop on the second floor of a mall. The camera was a bit shaky, probably taken secretly by him. In the frame, a woman stood with her back to the camera on a fitting table, wearing a pure white mermaid wedding dress. The lines were instantly recognizable as the one I had saved in my album. The camera moved forward slightly, revealing Liu Gu's figure. He was leaning on a sofa holding a phone with a faint smile on his face. The woman walked over and asked him something. He looked up, reached out to adjust her veil, such a natural yet affectionate gesture I knew so well. It was a pose he had done for me countless times. The camera shifted again and both of their hands wore identical thin silver chains, the same couple bracelets. At the end of the video, Liu Gu stood up and walked over to her, bending down to whisper something. Although I couldn't hear the words, the closeness and the smile were unmistakable. I held my breath, watching the video freeze on the moment the woman turned around. Her face was ruby chin. My fingers trembled slightly and the phone nearly slipped from my hand. I replayed the video 3 more times, each time becoming clearer in my realization. That dress was meant to be mine to try on. That person was meant to be me. I picked up my phone and dialed Liu Gu's number directly. The call was answered quickly with the background noise of a bustling mall. "Piper? I'm busy right now, later. Are you in a bridal shop?" I cut him off, my voice unusually calm. He paused for a moment, then hesitated. Yeah, I'm with Ruby Chin." "What's Ruby Chin doing here?" I asked. "She's helping her sister pick out a wedding dress," he replied without thinking. "Her sister is getting married next month and she insisted she come look at styles. I just happened to be passing by, so I brought her in." "You two tried on the mermaid style," I said. There was a 2-second silence on the other end, followed by a light chuckle. "Are you still thinking about that? Why are you going through my phone like a ledger?" "Piper, have you been a bit too tense lately?" "I have a video," I interrupted him, my tone calm but firm enough to stop him. "Did you secretly film me?" he asked. "It wasn't me who took the video," I said, taking a deep breath. "But the footage is pretty clear. You helped her adjust her veil, she wore those bracelets and you were smiling." "It's a misunderstanding," he quickly explained. "Her sister was changing clothes and the store clerk asked her to try on a sample. She was worried it wouldn't fit, so I just helped her adjust it." "Why are you always so suspicious?" I heard myself let out a faint laugh. "Liu Gu, you're really good at making things up." He sighed, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. "I know you've been under a lot of pressure from your recent promotion, but can you please stop taking it out on me? I haven't done anything wrong. It's just that you're overthinking things too much." "Overthinking?" I retorted. "Yeah, you're right. You get upset over such a small thing. I really don't know how you became like this. Don't you think this is ridiculous?" I asked. "It's you who's ridiculous." His voice started to turn sharp. "I went with you to pick out your wedding dress out of kindness, and you still had to twist it into something bad. Piper Lin, can you please stop being so controlling?" I held the phone tightly, my knuckles almost white. "So your conclusion is that I'm wrong? If you want to interpret it that way, I can't do anything about it," he said coldly. "Then there's no need to explain," I said calmly. "Liu Gu, we're done." "What did you say?" "Done. Go tend to your deputy assistant duties." After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. The moment the screen went dark, my hands stopped shaking. After the call ended, I stared at the black screen for a long time. The tightness in my chest didn't fade immediately but instead slowly spread, as if something cold was spreading inside me. I opened my contacts and found his name, Mr. Gu. My finger gently slid across the screen, clicked into the details page and selected Delete Contact. The system popped up a prompt Delete, and I clicked Yes without hesitation. Then I opened WeChat, searched for Ruby Chin, and clicked Block and Delete. I cleared photos, chat records, voice and video messages, shared memos one by one. Even the silver ring he had given me was taken off and placed in a drawer. Each deletion felt like something was falling from my chest, but strangely when it was all done only clarity remained. After deleting everything I leaned back in my chair, staring blankly at the company logo on my computer desktop. It was then that I realized in the past few years, I had not only given my feelings to him, but also handed over the rhythm of my life to him. And when I trusted him the most he had easily switched channels. It was late at night when I walked to the balcony, opened the window and a cold breeze rushed in making me shiver slightly. Streetlights reflected on the glass, showing a stranger's reflection. I suddenly smiled. Actually he hadn't changed, it was just that I was too slow to see it. I turned my phone on again, opened the system page and saw those familiar words. Your layoff application will take effect at 1800 hours the next day. I didn't move. The wind moved the curtain and the lights outside flickered. I stared at the screen silently as if waiting for the countdown to reach 0. At that moment I felt a strange lightness for the first time, not relief, not anger, but liberation. At 9 a.m. I appeared at the HR office on time. HR Xiao Lu looked at me in shock. President Lin, what's going on? I handed him the resignation letter I had prepared in advance. Submitting officially, please proceed according to the process. He clearly hadn't heard anything, hurriedly opened the system, confirmed the information was correct and said quietly, the system was locked yesterday, didn't you withdraw it? I shook my head, no. His face immediately changed and he gave a somewhat embarrassed smile. The company really doesn't want to let you go. You're the head of the strategic department. How could the new vice president suddenly? I didn't explain, only saying, let's just follow the process. He wanted to say something but ultimately didn't ask further, only silently opening the system to process my paperwork. Printing the resignation form, canceling my ID badge, signing documents, the whole process took less than 20 minutes. After signing the final page he let out a soft sigh. President Lin, I truly wish you all the best in the future. Thank you. I stood up to leave and just as I reached the door I ran into old Wu, the finance manager who had just arrived at the office. Seeing the resignation form in my hand, he froze for a second, opened his mouth but said nothing. I nodded and smiled at him naturally, just like every other greeting, except no one was joking around anymore with, "Good morning, Vice President." As I walked through the corridor, several colleagues looked up at me with complex expressions. Someone whispered, "She really left." No one followed me or tried to stop me. I knew they had all heard something already, but they were all waiting to see if I would press the withdraw button. Now they know I won't. I walked into the strategic department to pack up my few belongings. A folder, a potted money tree, a notebook and a group photo. I packed slowly as if bidding farewell to the past with each item. Before leaving I glanced at the project manual on my desk that had been there for 4 years. On the back cover was a line I had written myself. It's okay if others don't understand me, I just need to understand myself. I turned off the computer, picked up the cardboard box and walked out of the office. Just as I stepped into the lobby my phone buzzed, it was a call from Liu Gu. Where are you now? I didn't answer and kept walking forward. Before I even left the company's main hall, he appeared at the elevator entrance, moving very quickly. Piper Lin, you're crazy? He grabbed my arm, his voice low but trembling. You really didn't withdraw it? I looked at him, my eyes as calm as still water. Didn't you say it was a joke? I just took you up on your joke. He glared at me as if waking from a dream. Do you know there's an internal announcement today? Leaving at this moment is pushing me into a fire pit. Oh. I nodded. But the system shows the layoff applicant is Ruby Chin. Using your permissions, if there's a fire pit, it's the one you two dug. She didn't know anything, I just had her fill out a test form, and you insisted on arguing with a child. I raised my eyebrows slightly. She's not a child anymore, she's the vice president's assistant. He was choked into silence, his face darkening instantly. Did you plan this all along? No, I answered calmly. I just decided not to stay. Piper Lin, he nearly bit his teeth. You took the core project, the entire team, this is betrayal. A faint smile played on my lips. Stepping on me doesn't count as betrayal, but not pulling back does? His breathing was rapid as if he were desperately suppressing his emotions. You can still go back now. I can cover this up and the company will understand that you lost control of your emotions. Unfortunately, I looked at him, I don't want to explain now. He stared at me, speaking each word carefully. Don't think you can win just by leaving. I laughed. I'm not leaving to win, I'm leaving to get away. I shook off his hand and walked out. The sun was just right. I passed through the lobby and outside the glass doors was a bustling street. No one called after me, no one blocked me at the entrance. I truly left. At 3 p.m., chaos erupted in the company conference room. A system notification popped up. Project lead ID X0373 has been deactivated. Replacement to be assigned. That was my ID. Then came data review access revoked, copy retention path missing, and 5 more alerts, plunging the entire strategy department into paralysis. Several senior team leads also submitted resignation procedures, with the system showing under approval. In the conference room, the project department head turned pale. What did Director Lin take? Someone whispered. She didn't take any files, she took the people. 3 project teams submitted transfer and resignation applications this morning. The key position handover documents are encrypted. Only the original responsible person can unlock them, which are those veteran members who left with her. Liu Gu sat at the head of the table, his face as dark as night. Ruby Chin sat on one side, flipping through documents, her fingers trembling, her face paler than paper. Director Gu, HR Xiao Lu entered holding a stack of printed papers. These are today's new resignation applications, including Zhou, head of the planning department, Lu, head of operations, and Xiao Xing from finance. Liu Gu slammed the table. Are they all crazy? They all ran off. The project department assistant whispered. They said they're going to the new company with Director Lin. The conference room fell into deathly silence. No one dared to make a sound. Ruby Chin's voice was shaky. Then should we still hold the afternoon meeting? Liu Gu stared at the system with rows of pending personnel, data disconnected, and document-locked notifications as if someone had stripped his skin off in public. He asked slowly, which company did she go to? No one answered, but everyone knew his most solid move had backfired. I stood outside the company building, sunlight falling from behind, casting my shadow onto the steps, long and distinct. My phone rang, it was Zhou Xiao. I picked up. All set, he asked. Just walked out, I replied. He chuckled softly on the other end. The news is already out. Screenshots of your company's internal system failure are going viral online. That's too fast. You took those people, each one of them is an industry elite. It's only natural they speak up. I didn't respond, my fingertips gently rubbing the edge of the cardboard box. His voice turned serious. We've cleared the space in our office. The entire planning department will report to you. I've kept the original folders for the projects you want. Tomorrow you can move in. I watched the bus drive past across the street, and the scenes in my mind switched to the floor-to-ceiling windows of the new office building, the coffee machine, the private meeting room. All of it no longer belonged to Liu Gu. I said softly, Zhou Xiao, thank you. There was a pause on his end and his tone became Ching Song. All right, no need for sentimentality. We're partners, not foster parents. I laughed, looked up at the sky, and the wind stirred the strands of hair by my ears. It was a bit cool but not piercing. I turned around and left without looking back. The building behind me was like an old stage. The scenery was faded, the actors had left the stage, the lights went out, and the play was over. I had finally walked out. 3 days later, I walked through the entrance of the new company's office building. The company, named Musi Planning, was a startup team co-founded by Zhou Xiao 3 years ago with 2 old friends. Though not very large in scale, it had an excellent reputation in the industry due to several successful digital transformation projects. Now he offered me the position of operations director, along with equity incentives with favorable conditions. More importantly, I brought over the most capable team in the entire strategic chain, the team that had built its reputation at my former company, now reuniting in a new battlefield with surprisingly unified emotions. You'd better come back or we'd be falling apart, Department Head Lu Shan patted my shoulder. Piper, we're really going to win this time. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the office, looking across at the familiar office building. That was where I had worked for 10 years, and now it had become my rival's territory. The meeting room is ready, President Zhou is waiting for you, the assistant came in to remind me. I pulled my gaze away and turned toward the conference room. The first project was a direct confrontation with my former employer. The client was Chang'an Group, a top 3 industry client. The bidding project was internal digital transformation for the enterprise, with a project value reaching 7 figures. I had worked with this client for 2 years at my former company, and now it had become our first tough battle. How do you want to fight this battle? Zhou Xiao looked at me. Win, I replied. He laughed. I like your straightforwardness. I glanced at the bidding materials on the table, flipped to the first page of the planning section, and Ruby Chen's name was clearly listed. She was the head of our counterparts. I said softly, nice. The bidding meeting was held at Chang'an Group's headquarters. That morning at 9 a.m. I arrived with my team on time. In the corridor outside the meeting room as I just sat down, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Ruby Chen entered wearing high heels and carrying documents. She wore a well-fitted white suit, her makeup was ginger, and her gaze swept across the room, meeting mine directly. For a moment she stopped, a flicker of panic crossed her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. President Lin, she smiled, didn't expect to meet so soon. I also smiled. Assistant to the vice president transferred? Temporarily assigned to lead the project, she smiled, a hint of challenge flashing in her eyes. President Gu said Chang'an is a big project, so I have to be in charge. I looked at her without responding. After the meeting started, we presented first. I displayed on stage the research data our team gathered on Chang'an Group's legacy system, employee pain point analysis, and a visualized solution based on AI-optimized processes. The logic was clear and the data was solid. Several senior executives from the client side nodded frequently. When it was time for the old employer to step in, Ruby Chen flipped through her slides with ease, speaking quickly and confidently, though the content seemed all too familiar. I quietly watched her 6th slide. The data comparison chart was clearly the analytical framework I had previously written for this project at my former company. Even with a different template, the chart logic was unmistakably mine. So she had even mastered the art of stealing so skillfully. I opened the folder beside me and handed Zhou Xiao a note that read, "Backup plan activated." He immediately understood and gave a gesture to his assistant. 5 minutes later, our emergency solution was projected live. The supply chain retrospective process from Q3 of last year is not in your presentation, I pointed out right then. We built our model based on Q1 data this year, Ruby Chen replied, her tone clearly becoming impatient. You overlooked the outsourcing system issue at the end of last year. The client lost over 8 million yuan because of it, I said, looking at the client representative. He looked surprised. How did you know about that? I smiled slightly. One of our engineers personally worked on that system retrospective project. I can send you the report on how the mistake occurred right now via email. Ruby Chen clearly panicked, frantically flipping through her documents in an attempt to find supplementary materials, but it was obvious she hadn't prepared a second plan. The client side started whispering among themselves, and someone had already closed her presentation book with impatience. I seized the moment. Our team can complete process simulation testing within 2 weeks and deliver a demo version in advance. If the client is satisfied, we can proceed to the system deployment phase. Can your team handle the scale of Chang'an's deployment? The client representative questioned. Our predecessor was the strategy group of the former X group. The OA system you're currently using was developed by us, I replied. The client nodded and finally showed a satisfied expression. That system was indeed very user-friendly. At this moment, Ruby Chen stood silently by, her face pale. Her assistant quietly handed her the second contingency plan, but her trembling hands failed to catch it, and the entire stack of documents crashed to the ground with a sharp crack. In that instant, all eyes in the conference room turned to her. I spoke softly. Didn't the Deputy General's assistant handle system projects? Her eyes were panicked, her lips pale, and for a moment she couldn't utter a word. The client representative made the decision. We've decided to adopt the solution proposed by Mui's planning, and will sign the cooperation agreement shortly. I closed my laptop, stood up and bowed. Thank you for your trust. As I walked out of the conference room, I saw Ruby Chen standing motionless in front of the glass, her fingers tightly gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. This was the first time I had completely shattered her carefully constructed public image, under the bright daylight in front of her polished persona, by easily defeating her without shouting or reveling in revenge, simply by presenting the most straightforward facts that shattered the dignity she had desperately maintained. Less than 2 hours after Chang'an Group officially announced their intent to cooperate, my former employer was in complete chaos. The project manager posted screenshots in the internal group chat about stolen client data and premature leak of bidding materials, causing an uproar. Liu Gu exploded during the emergency management meeting in the afternoon. Who the hell gave her the PPT? The conference room fell into deathly silence with no one answering. Are you all mute? He slammed his hand on the table. Someone whispered, it seems someone changed the system permissions last month. Who approved the changes? It was Ruby Chin using your ID to assign permissions. Liu Gu's face turned ashen. He turned to Ruby Chin, who sat in the corner. You tampered with the system? Ruby Chin stammered, I just wanted to supplement some data. I didn't expect her to. You got publicly humiliated in the meeting and you still have the nerve to talk? Her face flushed red and she couldn't speak. Liu Gu stood up in anger. The board will investigate the permission leak. Go explain it yourself. No one dared to speak again in the conference room. At that moment his assistant walked in and reported quietly, Piper Lin sighed, the Chang'an contract has been signed and they're preparing for the test phase. Liu Gu's anger flared even more, but he knew clearly that he had lost this round completely. Since the night of the failed bid for the Chang'an project, Liu Gu had never answered Ruby Chin's calls. At first she only sent messages carefully saying, Liu, I didn't expect her to come. Later she switched to voice messages, her tone gradually becoming panicked. I really didn't mean it, believe me just this once. Then came a series of video requests and phone bombardments, all of which went unanswered. She once tried to block his office door, but that day he didn't even lift his head, just telling his assistant, please have anyone unrelated leave. She felt as if she had been slapped in public, her face flushed red, yet she still forced a weak smile. I just wanted to explain. The assistant gave him no chance, coldly uttering 4 words. Internal closed-door review. Back at her own small workstation, she flipped through the pages of the PPT from the failed bid, her nails digging into her palms. It was clearly a template she had copied from Liu Gu's computer. The logical structure, word choices, even the reference cases were identical. She had merely borrowed the framework I had left behind and changed the cover page. She never expected that I would use another, more updated and comprehensive proposal to completely overwhelm her with no chance to fight back. She never expected that Liu Gu would treat her like trash, isolating her from the office. She was unwilling to accept this. Over the years she had endured humiliation and hardship, climbing from an unremarkable campus recruit to his side, becoming the person he trusted most, even daring not to take leave when his father was hospitalized. She had believed she would eventually become the woman sitting beside him, attending board meetings shoulder to shoulder with him. But now everything was gone. The incident blew up completely on the morning of the 4th day. The company's legal department discovered during a routine review that there had been 17 instances of special permission usage in the past 3 months within the company system, including personnel adjustments, performance evaluations and draft layoffs, all operated under the account Executive Deputy Permissions, with Ruby Chin as the operator. The key point was that this deputy permission originated from Liu Gu's main account and had no backup. Isn't she just an intern assistant? The legal director's voice echoed in the meeting room. Yes, the head of HR responded quietly. What right does she have to submit executive-level personnel change requests? Apparently it was authorized verbally by President Gu. Then please tell me, where are the company system regulations? Where is the permission isolation? Where is the risk control? No one dared to speak. Among the personnel change records, Piper Lin's layoff recommendation was clearly listed, with the timestamp showing Friday afternoon last week, the same day Liu Gu had been working overtime. Moreover, we found that she used the permissions without binding any approval process, the legal director continued, flipping through documents. This means that an intern assistant could bypass multiple layers of review and directly submit executive-level changes. At one end of the conference table, executives looked at each other in silence. Did Liu Gu know about this at the time? System records show that his account was not logged out during her operations, meaning he was present. Yes. The senior executives murmured among themselves as the documents were turned page by page, like the files of a trial. That afternoon, the board of directors convened urgently in the multi-purpose hall on the second floor of the headquarters. The curtains were drawn tight, the atmosphere so oppressive it was suffocating. Liu Gu sat at the head of the table with the seat originally belonging to me left empty, a light gray high-backed chair that had been thoroughly cleaned but still served as an invisible mockery. President Gu, may I ask if you were aware that Ruby Qin used your authorized account to repeatedly exceed her authority in submitting executive personnel operations? Chairman of the board came straight to the point. I authorized her to handle some temporary work. Liu Gu frowned. She said she was debugging the system and I didn't interfere much. She submitted a layoff list. Deputy director tapped the table. The list included your fiancé Piper Lin. Do you think that's debugging? He fell silent. Did you set up approvers for these operations? She used the permissions I granted her. I didn't back up the authorization. So you're saying the entire system changes were based on a single intern assistant having free access? The scene erupted in shock. Liu Gu, you are the project vice president and a member of the company's security committee. You should know best what constitutes an unauthorized access. Liu Gu's lips were pressed together, his forehead veins throbbing. Since you took office, the company's technical risks have surged dramatically, projects have continuously declined and customer attrition has increased. Yet you allowed an assistant without formal rank to frequently access the system core. Now what explanation do you have? He opened his mouth but found himself unable to offer any reason that could hold water. The company decides that, starting today, all your positions are suspended, and we will act upon the results of the internal investigation. As soon as the words were spoken, the conference hall fell silent. Liu Gu leaned back in his chair, staring blankly at the ceiling. The man who had once confidently declared he was just joking now had lost all his chips. That afternoon, a photo surfaced in the company WeChat group. The photo was taken at the meeting room entrance. Ruby Qin with her hair disheveled, eyes red, nearly collapsing with emotion as she shouted inside, "Impossible! I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you investigating me? I was just taking care of him. I was doing it for his own good." Two security guards tried to escort her out of the floor. She shook off one of their hands, her heel broke and she nearly fell. Someone recognized those shoes as a limited edition she had been showing off last week. Her voice continued shouting, "He's my boyfriend. We're going to be together someday. He promised me." Enough. A voice from inside the room came from the HR director. "Ruby Qin, you are temporarily removed from the investigation." She was still struggling when one of the older security guards grabbed her arm. "You can't treat me like this. I'm his person." Her voice echoed through the entire corridor, distorted and torn, like the last shred of dignity being ripped away. At 5 p.m., I received the photo forwarded by Zhou Xiao. In the image, Ruby Qin sat by the flower bed in front of the company, face down in her arms, shoulders shaking. I stared at the photo for a few seconds, feeling no pity or satisfaction, only a profound sense of calm rising from within. It's over. The girl who had always cooed Piper's sister, in front of me finally revealed her true self. I put the photo into my file folder and closed my computer. A calendar reminder popped up on my desktop. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we will officially sign with Chang'an Group. I stood up and walked to the window. The sunset poured in, turning the glass into a golden red. Ms. Piper Lin from Wheezy Planning will deliver a keynote speech, "The Boundaries of Trust, Risks and Reconstruction in the Era of Data." As the host finished speaking, I walked from the side of the stage toward the podium. The venue was packed with no empty seats. The front row was filled with executives from leading companies, investors and media representatives, with flashes continuously going off. This was the most anticipated digital industry summit of the year. Standing on this stage was not only industry recognition, but also a silent declaration of my status. I stood still and looked down at the audience. I wasn't nervous. Behind the podium was a massive LED screen playing my introduction video. Formerly employed at a leading company in the industry, I have overseen multiple digital projects. Currently serving as Director of Planning and Operations at Wheezy, leading my team to achieve major breakthroughs in several top-tier projects. I took a gentle breath, scanned the audience and began my speech. Hello everyone, I'm Piper Lynn. Today what I want to talk about is not just technology nor just data. I want to talk about the cost of trust. PPT switched to display a blank table with only 2 words, permission and responsibility. The audience fell silent. I knew many were waiting to hear a story and I wouldn't let them down. My peripheral vision caught sight of the 3rd row, slightly to the left. Leo Gu was sitting there looking exhausted, dressed formally but much more haggard than before. Next to him sat Ruby Chin, wearing a dark blue suit, her hair curled, her makeup ying-jur, yet her tiredness was evident in her expression. I wasn't surprised by their presence, such industry conferences are open to the public. And besides, the podium I now stood on was a place they once thought I could never reach. As the spotlight swept across his face, he instinctively turned his head away. I didn't look at them and continued speaking. I once worked for a company for 10 years and I thought time could earn trust. I turned and clicked to the next slide, which displayed a data permission operation diagram with a logical flowchart. But later I realized a line of code, a temporary authorization, could erase a person's trust completely. I didn't name anyone, but everyone in the audience knew who I was talking about and which company. I heard a slight commotion from somewhere in the audience. Some people murmured, others glanced toward the 3rd row. Leo Gu remained seated, his head down as if he couldn't hear anything. Ruby Chin sat extremely straight, her hands clenched tightly, her fingernails deeply embedded in her palms, her smile long gone, replaced by silence. Permission can empower someone with the power to change a system, or it can destroy a partnership, even a relationship. My voice remained calm but firm. A misuse of permission doesn't just ruin a program, it destroys the trust system behind the process. It fractures teams and ends relationships that could have continued. The screen flashed a familiar news screenshot. X Group's core project goes out of control. Management permissions suspected to be tampered with by intern, responsible person under investigation. Low murmurs erupted in the audience and someone asked me, "Did you ever regret leaving?" Actually, there's something I've always wanted to say. The one who should truly regret has never been me. I scanned the audience below. I'm here today to tell you, don't underestimate what lies behind the abuse of power, the sacrificed professional team and the trust that's been broken. The audience erupted in the first round of applause. I paused for a few seconds and continued. Fortunately, I later joined a new team that believed in me and was worthy of my trust. We rebuilt our processes and systems and, more importantly, the trust between us. The screen switched to photos of me working with my team. Some smiling, others sketching flowcharts on the conference table with the large floor-to-ceiling windows of our new office in the background. I'm very proud to be here today telling this story, I concluded. Because I believe that no matter where you leave from, it's not an ending. It's the beginning of a new choice. The entire audience burst into thunderous applause, lasting for over 10 seconds. I saw Ruby Chin lower her head and wipe her face with the back of her hand. She was crying, really crying, her emotions finally breaking through the mask. But I showed no emotion at all. I turned and walked off the stage with composure. That very night, right after I finished my speech, several major industry influencers simultaneously posted a message. Breaking news. X Group's emergency board meeting resolution passed with 12 votes in favor and 1 vote abstained, dismissing Leo Gu's vice president position, effective immediately. The top comment read, "We finally waited for this day." The heat hadn't even died down when a screenshot of a meeting minutes was leaked. Due to long-term power confusion and failure of supervision, the project has been out of control repeatedly. Leo Gu will no longer hold any management position and will enter a probationary period. That night, messages flooded in the group chat. Did you see the trending topic? He's done for. I heard he's already moved out of the executive apartment. Ruby Chin is probably also being punished. Even the outsourcing companies won't hire her anymore. I didn't respond. I just turned my phone to silent and continued organizing the project materials for the next day. The coffee on the desk had gone cold. I got up to pour it out. Just as I turned around under the streetlight, a familiar black sedan stopped at the corner of the street. I stood by the window watching, barely making out a silhouette in the car. It was him, sitting there motionless as if waiting for something. But I didn't go down because he should know that I had already walked the entire return path. What's left now is for him to keep spinning in place. Leo arranged to meet me on a rainy afternoon. He was wearing a gray coat, standing outside the cafe beneath the music planning building, his expression unusually calm. I wasn't surprised. People like him couldn't truly stay silent. "I want to talk to you," he said softly, his eyes holding a restraint I had never seen before. "Piper, I've been thinking about the issues between us lately." I sat down without responding. He tried to push the coffee toward me, then quickly pulled it back as if realizing he no longer had any right to do so. "I was wrong," he said, his voice low. "The day you left I thought you were just being impulsive. But later you took the Chang'an project by yourself and built the entire line. By then you no longer needed me, did you?" "It's not about needing or not needing," I said calmly. "You cut that thread yourself, the thread of trust." He looked down, his knuckles white. "I've been thinking if we could start over." I interrupted him gently. "Leo, this isn't a matter of who wins or loses. We're just not compatible." In that moment his eyes finally changed from trying to persuade to genuine surrender. "You're already ahead of me," he said. I didn't deny it. Yes, I've already moved on. It wasn't because I hated him so much, nor because I needed him to regret it. It was simply that I no longer wanted that kind of relationship. On the day of the new company's board meeting, I didn't wear my usual business suit, just a simple white shirt and a gray-blue blazer. When the meeting ended and the chairman formally announced that I would be promoted to one of the company's board members, applause erupted throughout the room. My hand remained on the notepad, not lifting for even a second. It wasn't because I wasn't excited, it was because I had never believed that I could regain anything through confrontation. What I had gone through shouldn't be repaid with hatred. I was simply taking one step at a time to reclaim the position that was rightfully mine. At lunchtime, the young colleagues in my department teased me into buying them a meal. "Director Lin, it's only proper that you treat us to something good now that you're a director, isn't it?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Fine, whoever works the latest today gets to choose the menu." "Huh. Isn't it usually whoever leaves first who pays? Now that I'm a board member, it's my rules." Everyone burst into laughter. Zhou Xiao knocked on the doorframe. "You free? Want to go get some fresh air before the afternoon meeting?" "Where?" "Go see the sea." I paused, then nodded. "Okay." The sea breeze was strong in the evening, and the sand was whipped up by the wind in all directions. I walked beside Zhou Xiao, leaving a trail of shallow footprints in the sand. "Do you remember the first time we drank here?" he suddenly asked. "I remember," I nodded. "Back then you said starting a business was a foolish path and I laughed at your idealism. Now you're standing in the reality of ideals." "That's right," he said. I didn't respond. The wind carried a salty taste and a hint of warm moisture. He stopped walking, turned his head to look at me, his voice soft. "If I had come earlier, would you have chosen me?" I didn't answer right away. He didn't press. He just stood there waiting. The sea breeze scattered my hair. I looked up at the horizon, where clouds churned like waves that hadn't yet calmed. I thought for a long time, then finally smiled. "I wouldn't choose anyone." He raised an eyebrow. "I just want to choose myself now." He was stunned for a moment, then smiled too. "Okay, then from now on we'll choose ourselves and walk side by side." I nodded. Some relationships don't need promises or answers. Just standing in the same scenery, standing shoulder to shoulder is enough. In the early morning I sat alone by the sea, my shoes cast aside, my feet buried in the fine sand. The waves gently lapped at the shore, layer upon layer. Sunlight pierced through the thin mist, warming my face. Beside me lay a notebook filled with the new project proposal for the next quarter. Several initial concepts were still in draft form, but I already had a general direction. I opened another folder. Inside was a draft email I had written to myself. "Piper, do you remember yourself 10 years ago? She came alone from a small town to this city, wearing a pair of high heels with almost broken soles, watching others in their sharp suits on the subway. She thought that as long as she worked hard, someone would notice. Now you know you don't need to be seen by anyone, you are inherently worthy of respect." I closed the notebook. In the distance, a child was building a sandcastle on the beach, constructing a spire bit by bit. His parents sat not far away, watching him with smiles. I quietly watched the child's movements and suddenly thought of myself as a child. I had walked many wrong paths, met the wrong people, but thankfully I never abandoned myself. I can finally live without trying to meet the expectations of others, and I finally understand. Life is not about winning or losing, it's about choices. I choose myself in this moment, I choose the peace of this moment. The tide rose, washing over my feet. I stood up and gently brushed the sand off my body. The sun had risen higher, making the entire sea sparkle. I walked back step by step, each step firm and steady.